Hello and welcome to Access Asia. I'm Chapegrand. In the show this week, in India, blasphemous comments about Prophet Mohammed fueled deadly protests against the ruling Hindu nationalist party and a diplomatic spat between New Delhi and Muslim countries. Now, haze is settling over Bangkok. Thailand decriminalizes cultivation and possession of cannabis, opening the way for the country to become a leader in the medical tourism sector. And we take a look at PUBG, the war video game that has young Afghans hooked and the Taliban worried. Starting in India, where derogatory comments about the Prophet Mohammed made by two officials from India's ruling Bharatiya Janata Party are causing a wildfire of deadly protests, political persecution, and diplomatic spats. Countries like Oman, Qatar, Malaysia, and Indonesia have lodged formal complaints with India's ambassadors. Yen Ali takes us through it.
These are the homes of suspected protest organizers, their bedrooms and kitchens bulldozed to the ground by authorities in Uttar Pradesh. Police have also arrested some 300 people. Security forces have been cracking down on unauthorized rallies that were sparked by anti-Islam comments made by prominent officials of the ruling BJP party, including spokeswoman Nupur Sharma.
She should be arrested as soon as possible and stringent action should be taken against her. And this is why we are protesting.
The statements were seen as blasphemous by believers and bigoted by critics. The ruling party has since suspended or expelled the two officials, describing them as fringe elements.
I think we have made it pretty clear that the tweets and comments do not reflect the views of the government. This has been conveyed to our interlocutors, as also the fact that action has been taken by the concerned quarters against those who made the comments and tweets.
The government's public disavowal of the two BJP members only comes after international criticism. Muslim-majority states in the Gulf summoned Indian diplomats demanding answers, and social media users suggested a boycott of Indian products. For many Indian Muslims, though, this was just the latest reminder of Islamophobia in the country. For decades, India's largest religious minority has suffered from discrimination. But since Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived to power in 2014, observers say the situation has become far worse. His BJP party has historic ties to far-right militant movements such as the RSS and the Bajrang Dal. And since becoming premier, his chosen interior minister described Bangladeshi migrants as termites. A new law was created to disenfranchise millions of Muslims, and journalists have reported on multiple instances of impunity for hate crimes.
Well, for more on this story, we can speak with Subir Sinha, who is a lecturer in development studies at the School of Oriental and African Studies in London. Mr. Sinha, thank you very much for being with us on France 24. First off, and very plainly, what's your assessment of the government's response to this controversy?
I think the government is trying to walk a tightrope. It has long cultivated good relations with many Muslim countries, including the Gulf countries. India's historically had very good relations with them. So he would like to continue that, but also economically speaking, they depend quite a lot on many countries. And in the last few years, they've actually seen a spate of civilian honors being given by Arab countries and Muslim majority countries to Mr. Modi personally as a part of strengthening that relationship. On the other hand, domestically, increasingly, we see that the radicalization of a Hindu vote bank, if you want to call it that, is the very center of Hindutva politics. And in fact, what we see is that the kinds of statements made by the officials of the Bharatiya Janata Party, these were already being uttered for the last couple of years by people who were not officials of the party, but who were quite close to the party, and that was being tolerated. So I think what we are witnessing right now is a breakdown in the kind of fine balance that Mr. Modi has been trying to achieve in terms of maintaining good relations with Muslim countries abroad while keeping pressure on Muslims and on many aspects of their everyday life within India, and also their exclusion from social and political platforms.
We've seen years of anti-Muslim policies being implemented under Narendra Modi and the BJP. Why has this particular episode fueled such outrage?
Because this was an insult to the Prophet, whereas other issues, in which they were attacking Muslims had to do with localized kinds of contexts, and in some cases were localized to issues that were within Indian politics, like, for example, the movement against the amendment of citizenship. This basically is an insult to the Prophet repeatedly by two of the members of the BJP who are spokespeople, and therefore this has an effect which is beyond India to the sort of Muslim community across the world.
We've seen these protests and these calls for boycotts of Indian products in a number of different countries. For India, what are the consequences economically of alienating so many Muslim countries?
It is massive because, as I said, the Gulf states and many other Muslim countries are destinations of Indian labor. Adani and Ambani, two of the largest firms in India who are close to Mr. Modi, they have massive investments into their power sector projects from these countries. India relies on some degree of subsidized flow of petroleum products, including, for example, liquid natural gas, which is the main cooking fuel within India. If these prices were to go up, that would put further inflationary pressure on the government. So that is one very important thing. Secondly, they have a large amount, in fact, half of all Indian migrants from India abroad basically go to countries in the Gulf, and they send billions of pounds in remittances back to the country. And it's also a destination for Indian agro exports.
Narendra Modi and the BJP took power nationally in 2014. Since then, we've seen nationalist policies enacted, like the revocation of Kashmir's special status or the Citizenship Amendment Act, which you mentioned. What's been the effect of such policies on India's development?
Well, that's a very good question. India's development on many indices has plummeted. So, for example, the latest international rankings on performance on environmental sustainability, India ranks 180 out of 180. It has plummeted in terms of food. It has plummeted in terms of employment for young people. India now has among the lowest participation of women in the workforce in the world at less than 10%. There are widespread, kind of reports regarding the fact that many Indians now just eat 2 meals rather than 3 in the day, and that the quality of food that they intake has also gone down. Same for education and so on. So on many of these issues, the developmental record is a disaster. However, if you were to look at things like construction of infrastructure, railway modernization, and those kinds of things, there are a number of indicators in which they have done well.
Subir Sinha, thank you very much for speaking with us on France 24. Thailand has long been known for its tough drug laws, but in recent years it's steadily liberalized them to the point that cannabis is now off the banned narcotics list, meaning that cultivation and possession of the drug has been decriminalized. As you can see, several thousand attendees at a cannabis festival made the most of the newly relaxed rules recently. Others who stand to benefit, the medical tourism industry, as Catherine Viet explains.
Betting on big demand, Thailand has legalized marijuana consumption. It's good news for people who've been pushing for recreational use, but officials warn that lighting up in public could be considered a nuisance that carries a potential 3-month prison sentence and $780 fine. The government says its focus is on promoting cannabis for medical use.
If we have the right awareness, cannabis is like gold, something valuable, and should be promoted.
Economic benefits are at the heart of the reform as the government eyes its globally renowned medical tourism industry. This year, spending in that sector is expected to hit $2.5 billion. Commercial growers have welcomed the move.
Now the opportunity has come that we can grow cannabis. The decriminalization is a great thing. It will help improve the economy.
There are some restrictions. It's illegal to possess or sell cannabis products with more than 0.2% of THC. the chemical that makes people high. Still, the government says nearly 100,000 people have already registered to grow cannabis at home. Thailand is still trying to recover from the economic devastation caused by the pandemic, which saw growth plummet by just over 6% in 2020 and barely hit 1% in 2021. Industry research firms say the country's recreational marijuana market has the potential to reach $424 million in the next 2 years.
For young Afghans, an online shoot-'em-up game called PUBG is offering a rare chance to escape the reality of Taliban rule. With limited options for entertainment, many in Kabul prefer staying indoors where they can connect with all the other people playing the game online, which has led the authorities to order a ban. Jenny Shin has a story.
The crackle of gunfire and distant explosions, sounds that are not unfamiliar in the streets of Kabul. Although this time it's coming from an online video game, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, or PUBG.
In this country, we're living, but we're not alive. We don't know what will happen from one moment to the next. It's the only way to pass the time. The only way we can spend more time with our friends.
With no jobs on the market and limited entertainment, it offers an escape from reality of the regime, as well as a rare channel of communication with the outside world, as users can play with other players online.
The situation is only getting worse. So most girls are staying at home and not going out much. So PUBG is a way to stay busy, a distraction from just sitting at home, depressed.
The withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan ushered in a new era of Taliban rule, and with it, restrictions on entertainment, though not as harsh as in the 90s, when TV, cinema, and even photography were prohibited. While banned by the Taliban, the game continues to engage millions of users, its brutal virtual reality mirroring that of real-life Afghanistan.
And that's it for this edition of Access Asia. If you want to catch any previous shows we've done, please go to our website, France24.com. In the meantime, enjoy and do stay tuned to France 24 for more news.
They observe. They contact us. They report, film, photograph. They are the voice of the voiceless. Your eyes in the far-flung reaches of the world. The Observers, a network of 5,000 committed citizens working with France 24.
One of our observers in Côte d'Ivoire, Gaspard.
Amateur footage and testimonials checked by our journalists and broadcast weekly. On The Observers, on France 24 and observers.france24.com.